O'clock report. We'll see you back here at 6.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Tonight, reporting from Washington, Sam Donaldson.
Good evening. Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev, desperately trying to save his country and his job, lashed out today at what he called the illegal and dangerous assertion that the Soviet Union no longer exists. But indeed, there is every indication tonight that that is the case. It was yesterday that the leaders of three powerful Slavic republics, Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, announced they have formed a new Commonwealth with the city of Minsk, the coordinating capital, not Moscow. And Gorbachev? Well, today Russian President Boris Yeltsin met with him, apparently to tell him he has no role. But as ABC's John Donvan reports from Moscow, Gorbachev is not going quietly.
At the Kremlin tonight, more questions than answers about who is governing what used to be the Soviet Union. It was only a few hours after Boris Yeltsin sat down here with Mikhail Gorbachev to explain why the Kremlin no longer controls the members of the new Commonwealth that Gorbachev responded with an announcement read on Soviet TV. He called the new Commonwealth unconstitutional and spelled out what he's going to do now. He is going to call on the parliaments of each of the republics to choose between the new Commonwealth, which would have no central government, and a new union that Gorbachev himself would head, with perhaps a national referendum on the question. But already, the Russian foreign minister has said it is too late for that. The Commonwealth is a reality. The Commonwealth was agreed upon at a weekend meeting of three men, the leaders of Belarusia, Ukraine, and Russia, all Slavic republics. Their territory encompasses 4/5 of what was the Soviet Union, nearly 3/4 of its population, much of its natural resources, especially food and oil. At their meeting this weekend, the Commonwealth leaders invited other republics to join, but some of them, fearing Slavic domination, are hesitant. Among them Kazakhstan, whose president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, supports Gorbachev, believing that a union headed by Gorbachev would better protect the interests of the smaller republics. But he knows Kazakhstan may have to join the Commonwealth to survive economically, and tonight told reporters, "I am a pragmatic politician. At least the government of Kazakhstan will discuss this project." Today on the Moscow Metro, most people saw the Commonwealth as a step forward, although some hope the weaker republics will not join. "We Slavs can live by ourselves," said this man, who believes, like many here, that the small republics will impede the Commonwealth's progress toward prosperity. And while Gorbachev may say a Commonwealth of independent states means chaos, many of these people believe it may halt the disintegration of their country and point them in a new direction. John Donvan, ABC News, Moscow.
The confusion in the Soviet Union, or the Commonwealth, or whatever it is now, goes beyond the political. The Russian foreign minister said today that Soviet nuclear weapons will remain under central control. But the president of Ukraine, Leonid Kravchuk, said Ukraine wants some authority too over the weapons. There are thousands of them. Here's ABC's John McWethy.
The U.S. is most worried about the 24,000 nuclear warheads located in Russia, the Ukraine, and Belarusia.
Our chief concern is that nuclear weapons remain under safe and secure control. We do not want to see a proliferation of independent nuclear states.
American officials conceded today that the U.S. does not know exactly who is in charge of the missile launch codes now that Mikhail Gorbachev is no longer boss. It is also unclear whether the military at this point would follow orders from either Moscow or the republics. The good news is the leaders of the republics are saying they want to abide by treaties negotiated with the U.S., and many are saying they want to go even further in dismantling the arsenal.
I think the bad news is the scale of problems are so enormous and the state of disintegration so advanced that it's going to be very difficult for anybody to keep control of the overall situation.
It would be very tempting for a republic that desperately needed the hard currency to feed its people to say, we have nuclear weapons, we can find a buyer for them on the world market.
There is also the concern that civil war could break out and nuclear weapons could then become prized possessions. That's why Secretary Baker is going to Russia, the Ukraine, and Belarusia next week to push for rapid demobilization of their nuclear forces before economic chaos takes over. Officials say Baker is so concerned that he will offer to help pay for part of the expensive process of destroying the warheads if the republics will just agree to move quickly. John McWethy, ABC News, the State Department.
In a moment, President Bush meets with his AIDS Commission for the first time. The real wall that separates the races in one South African town. And living the good life without ever getting out of your car.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Dristan.
Do you have a cold?
Yes, I do have a cold.
Here's 2 cold medicines. This relieves these 3 symptoms, this 9. Choose one.
I would use this one.
Why?
That's my cold. The fever, the headaches, the sinus congestion.
Here's what you chose.
I'm totally amazed.
Would you try Dristan Cold?
Absolutely.
How do you feel?
I feel amazingly good.
Dristan Cold relieves 9 tough cold symptoms. Dristan Cold, part of the Dristan family of products. Dristan, the face of relief today.
I love performing, though it's a lot more fun with an audience. I love sweet things, too, like Sunsweet pitted prunes. They're so tasty and fat-free. It's love, all right. It's Sunsweet.
Share the fantasy. Chanel number 5.
A federal judge ruled today that the Pentagon does have the right to ban homosexuals from serving in the military. In part, he says, to protect soldiers and sailors from AIDS. The judge ruled against a former Naval Academy midshipman who was forced to resign before graduation because he is homosexual. The man's lawyers say he will appeal. The subject of AIDS was also on President Bush's agenda today as he continues to focus on domestic affairs. Mr. Bush's own commission on AIDS has accused him of failing to exercise leadership in combating the disease. Today, Mr. Bush tried to change that image with a briefing from all of the top people in government concerned with AIDS. Here's ABC's George Strait.
Mr. Bush had never attended a meeting with his AIDS commissioners before. He responded to their criticism by asking what more he could do to help convince people to avoid the kind of behavior that puts them at risk for getting AIDS.
Do we need to do better in getting this behavioral message out there?
The chair of his AIDS commission said yes and asked Mr. Bush to overrule his health secretary, who has refused to pay for a controversial scientific survey on sexual practices.
We mustn't cripple ourselves by deciding there are certain things we don't want to ask about because of a sense of ill taste or something like that.
Mr. Bush made no commitments. He seemed more interested in getting assurances about what he said were questions about the safety of the blood supply.
It is very fair to say that the nation's blood supply is safe.
I think people are scared of that, and it's very reassuring.
So I think it's safe to say, Mr. President, the nation's blood supply is so safe that no one should have fear of a transfusion.
The president got high marks today for making such a visible expression of concern about AIDS. But AIDS activists say they want to see if that concern goes beyond this one highly publicized meeting. George Strait, ABC News, Washington.
When it comes to the American health care system as a whole, the Democrats are trying to show that they're the ones trying hardest to find a cure. A number of Democratic senators are traveling around the country this week, holding hearings on how to reform the system. We're going to deal with the subject all week as well. Today, the senators were at the University of Tampa in Florida, focusing on the cost of health care and its impact on families. Here's ABC's Al Dale.
If the senators wanted to look at the problem of high cost of health care, they need go no further than a few miles away. Eric Ritchie and his family are typical of the estimated 28 million Americans who hold jobs but have no employee medical coverage.
Michelle!
Private coverage would cost the Ritchies as much as they pay in rent, $350 a month. They cannot afford that, but Eric makes too much money to qualify for Medicaid.
It's frustrating, and it drives you nuts. I'm afraid to let my kids do certain things so that they don't get hurt, because if I run to the emergency room, that's $150 right there.
7-year-old Anthony needs an operation that the family cannot afford. He will get it soon, but only after 2 months of wading through the bureaucracy to find an obscure state program that would pay for it.
Hi.
Because there is no comprehensive health care system, many other people fall through the cracks. BJ and Janelle Wells suffer from the same life-threatening illnesses, heart and breathing disorders.
When you turn it on, it shows how fast my heart's beating.
Both have to connect themselves to heart and respiratory monitors every night before they go to bed.
I feel kind of sad sometimes because when other people get to spend overnight at someone's house and I can't, I'm pretty depressed myself about that.
Their medical care has cost millions of dollars over the years. Through 1988, most of the bills were paid by the father's insurance policy at work.
But when the firm was taken over and changed insurance policies, Wells chose to stay with the old carrier, even though it meant he would have to pay all of the cost himself. He was afraid the new company would not give his family the same benefits.
The premiums kept going up until the family could no longer afford them. They had to sell everything, including the family farm, in order to qualify for Medicaid.
We had to totally reshape our dreams, our goals for our family.
Right now, the goal is to keep BJ and Janelle healthy, even though it means keeping the family poor. Al Dale, ABC News, Wauchula, Florida.
The state of Pennsylvania today asked the Supreme Court to rule quickly on its new, very strict abortion law. The law's opponents have already asked for the same thing. A Supreme Court ruling which could overturn the Roe v. Wade decision that legalized abortion could come by next summer, right in the middle of next year's presidential campaign. When we come back, the savings and loan scandal and the case of the missing billion.
This is regular. This is better. This Bayer is regular, but for headaches, Anacin is better. This is regular. This is better. This Bufferin is regular, but for headaches, Anacin is better. What makes Anacin better? It's simple. Regular Bayer and Bufferin have one ingredient for pain, but Anacin has two ingredients, an effective pain medicine plus a second ingredient that makes Anacin work better. For headache relief, get Anacin. Get better.
Since 1980, over 500,000 Americans who make clothing and home fashions have lost their jobs. So if you think looking for the Made in the USA label doesn't matter,
next,
it matters.
Here's a great big idea.
Salad shooter.
From Presto, professional salad shooter slicer shredder. Big capacity and power. Special blades to point and slice thick, slice thin, shred, even ripple cut. Right where you want.
Salad shooter.
From Presto.
At Red Lobster, it only happens for the next few weeks. And it's just $7.99. Introducing a brand new shrimp combination, and wait till you taste it. First, we took a touch of honey and created new honey barbecue shrimp. Then the tang of lemon for new lemon broiled shrimp. Two new tastes together at a special low price, just $7.99. But for a limited time. So hurry to Red Lobster. And for holidays at home, party platters to go, ready in just 1 hour.
William Smith's mother took the witness stand today at her son's rape trial. Jean Kennedy Smith told the court that she did not hear any screams or any other unusual noises at the Kennedy estate on the night the woman says she was raped. Other defense witnesses today said the same thing, that no screams were heard in the house. William Smith himself is expected to take the witness stand tomorrow. There's a new twist to report tonight in the savings and loan scandal. It's the story of the investigators who were hired to track down $7 billion in missing assets, and how those investigators themselves are now being investigated. Here's ABC's Tom Foreman.
When the federal government took over 92 failed savings and loans in the western United States last year, it inherited $30 billion worth of assets owned by those S&Ls, from office buildings to land to people's homes.
Resolution Trust.
Since the government did not want to own such things, they were turned over to the Resolution Trust Corporation, which was created by the government to take an inventory and sell the property to recoup some of the losses already being paid for by taxpayers.
We're doing a dirty job. We are cleaning up the savings and loan mess.
But critics say the RTC made an even bigger mess by immediately losing track of $7 billion worth of those assets, and then paying a private subcontractor $25 million to help find them. $25 million for 3 months of work that critics in Washington say was so flawed it did not even begin to explain where the billions went.
This is a structure where they asked the Congress for a lot of flexibility, they received it, and they screwed up.
We feel if we're given a true and fair hearing to look at specifically what we did and where we are today, it will be determined that we did a good job.
Today, the RTC had another subcontractor begin an audit of the $25 million contract, hoping it will prove RTC did nothing wrong. hoping it will not show that the latest effort to clean up the S&Ls has lost another $25 million of taxpayers' money. Tom Foreman, ABC News, Denver.
On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials lost 14.5 points to close at 2871. The trading was moderate. The investigation into the late Robert Maxwell's financial empire turned to his sons today. A British court has ordered Kevin and Ian Maxwell to surrender their passports and has frozen Kevin's personal assets, apparently to make sure no more money disappears. Accountants now say that shortly before he died, Maxwell skimmed $1.2 billion from his companies in order to keep his empire from collapsing. We'll have more news in a moment.
I use a shampoo for dandruff, but my scalp still itches like crazy.
You need new Scalpicin, the revolutionary scalp medicine for deep scalp itch, not ordinary dandruff. Scalpicin is not a shampoo. It's a clear liquid you don't wash away like shampoo. Apply Scalpicin anytime for deep scalp itch relief with medicine chosen by doctors over all these dandruff shampoo formulas. Scalpicin penetrates to relieve the itch and help prevent flaking.
The itch is gone.
New Scalpicin, the scalp medicine for deep scalp itch.
Do your holiday shopping with the Discover card, and you'll not only give, you'll receive a cashback bonus for every charge. It pays to Discover.
In the mountains of Colombia, they celebrate the richness of the land. And from this land comes the richness of Colombian coffee. That's why Maxwell House blends its coffees with Colombian beans. Rich beans, rich coffee. Some we slow roast for old-fashioned richness. Some we roast dark for the flavor of France. We buy more Colombian beans than anyone in America. Maxwell House, blended with Colombian beans. Because better beans make better coffee.
Everyone knows Contact wrote the book on cold medicine. Now Contact's added a whole new chapter, introducing new Contact Day and Night. On this page, yellow day caplets that knock out your cold symptoms without making you drowsy, so you can breathe easy and work all day long. On this page, blue night caplets that relieve your symptoms to let you rest. Both formulas control your cold symptoms with the right medicine at the right time. New Contact Day and Night, a whole new chapter in cold relief.
While the Soviet Union comes apart, the nations of Western Europe are coming together. The leaders of the 12 nations that make up the European community are meeting today in the Dutch town of Maastricht to try to work out final arrangements for a new federation, one that will result, in essence, in a united Europe. Here's ABC's Jim Bitterman.
In the Brie country east of Paris, they make their soft cheeses about the same way they have for 1,000 years. But one day soon that will change. One day soon, the French government will impose tougher European-wide health standards on the brie makers.
Because of the enormous investment needed to meet the new standards, a small farmer will never be able to make cheese.
Whether it's the way the French make their cheese, how the Spanish treat their bulls, or whether the British will be able to shop on Sundays, daily lives of Europeans have been increasingly affected not just by their own governments, but by joint decisions of the 12-country European community. Now, in this ancient Dutch crossroads town, the leaders of the 12 are preparing to elevate Europe-wide government to a much higher plane and forge a political and economic union.
We believe that union is the only way we have to, on the world stage, be heard and hopefully understood.
But before they unite, the European leaders must first settle arguments over things like the ECU, the common European currency. By 1999, it could be Europe's only currency, although the British may not go along. The leaders must also decide how much political power to shift from national parliaments to the European Parliament, and how to unite their security and foreign policy decision-making. That is something the U.S. would applaud, a stable Europe which could add its weight to resolving world crises. Earlier fears that a strong Europe might freeze out American industry have simply not materialized.
What we seek above all is a strong, reliable, economically sound partner in Europe with whom we can continue to work toward peace and security worldwide.
It won't be clear until later how much real distance the Europeans will travel toward unity. But one American official said this week's meetings here follow the bicycle theory. If forward motion is maintained, the idea of a united Europe will remain upright. Jim Bitterman, ABC News, Maastricht, Holland.
With all this change in Europe and elsewhere, there is still one place where old barriers are removed only to be replaced by new ones. We're speaking of South Africa. ABC's Don Kladstrup has visited a suburb of Johannesburg where, despite the racial reforms, the whites have found a way to keep their black neighbors out of sight.
It's a bit like a modern-day ghost town. Houses stand empty. Many others are for sale. Hardly anyone is on the streets.
If I knew it about 5 years before, I wouldn't buy here. No ways.
That was before squatters arrived, erecting shacks on the edge of Del Park. Today, they number several thousand, live in abject poverty, and are an eyesore to most Del Park residents.
You can see there how dirty it is there, the papers and everything there.
I feel it's important that we have some sort of distinction between them and us.
So instead of building bridges, the whites, who chose to stay in Del Park, built a wall. The Berlin Wall, as some call it. A wall nearly 3 miles long, separating their neighborhood from the black one.
This is not dividing people. I don't believe it is.
What do you think it is doing?
It's keeping people satisfied.
People like Mr. and Mrs. Peterson. I just don't like people of other races that much, he says. The wall has improved the view, says Mrs. Peterson. We used to sit in our garden and have to look at all those tin shacks. Now we have the wall. Some whites, fearing a rise in crime, think a mere wall, built with black labor, of course, isn't enough. That it should be electrified and fitted with razor wire.
The black South African is noisy and it upsets the dogs.
You can give them the education right up to professor level. Once he sits down there in the crawl and they start screaming and screeching, he becomes one of them.
A few whites, however, think the wall is unfair.
We've got blacks working in the garden, maids working in the house. Why put a wall up?
At a meeting in the Black Township, a woman tried to persuade whites to remove the wall. I worked in your homes. I loved you despite the way you sometimes treated me. And I love you now, but please, take that wall away. It is a pain in my heart. White officials said there is nothing illegal about the wall.
Maybe in 10 years' time from now, that wall will come down like the Berlin Wall. But for the time being, that wall is going to stay.
While it may be the most visible barrier, there are others. Some subtle.
I still say there's nobody that can sing like you people.
Others all too obvious.
I've got nothing against them, but maybe it's the way I was brought up. You know, I was brought up, you don't mix. You stay in your color. You know, I guess it's difficult for a person.
What about the new South Africa?
You'll get used to it.
Your son.
Yes.
In the meantime, they have to wait on the other side of the wall. Don Kladstrup, ABC News, Del Park, South Africa.
We'll have our final report in a moment.
Hello, Jill. Oh, how about dinner at our house? What's wrong? Headache. I can imagine. Oh, I've got what you need. Motrin IB. Works great on headaches. My doctor said it's the same medicine as in prescription Motrin, but in non-prescription strength. One Motrin IB works as well as 2 regular Tylenol. Here.
Oh, no.
Don't look. Just keep this. Sounds like they'll need it too.
Motrin IB, recommended by thousands of doctors.
And your neighbor.
Home for the holidays with Domino's Pizza's Season's Greetings Special. Now get a medium pepperoni pizza for just $2.99 with your favorite large pizza at the regular price.
Ho, ho.
I was a dedicated beard wearer until my wife gave me the new Remington Microscreen Elite. It's quick. It's close. The Remington Microscreen Elite has 2 ultra-thin screens. So comfortable, shaves as close as a blade or your money back. That's Remington.
For years, Pledge has kept our furniture beautiful. Well, now New Pledge does even more. With a special dust-resistant formula called Dust Block, now Pledge actually repels dust. 2 weeks ago, I polished the word Pledge into this table. Watch. New Pledge repels over half the dust I'd get just dry dusting. Pledge knows our lives are a lot busier these days, but with New Pledge, they're a little easier, too.
New Pledge with Dust Block. It actually repels dust. From SC Johnson Wax.
More serious questions have surfaced concerning the Metro Water Department and the handling of ratepayers' money. I'm Bob Mueller. We'll have the story next at 6.
Finally tonight, life is seen from the driver's seat. Mention the word drive-in, and most people are likely to think of fast food restaurants and movies. In Southern California, a part of the country that has always prided itself on its expanded horizons, people take a much broader view of the concept. Here's Judy Muller.
For better or for worse, Americans are wedded to their cars. And for Californians, it is often a marriage of convenience. Drive-through businesses are thriving.
I love the convenience of it. Just drive in and drive out.
Motorists can get flowers on the fly or an oil change on the go. The whole process takes about 10 minutes, and the customer never has to leave the car.
I can file my nails or balance my checkbook and keep right on going.
One supermarket has installed a drive-up service, giving new meaning to window shopping. Why this attraction to surrogate shopping?
I'm lazy. It's very convenient.
And what could be more convenient than a drive-through convenience store?
You come in for 2 gallons of milk and a movie, it's perfect.
People will line up for almost anything as long as they don't have to get out of their cars. Drive-through flu shots, for example.
Stick. There you go. Have a good day.
Another sign of the times, parking lot prayer. At the Crystal Cathedral in Garden Grove, worshipers can tune in the sermon on the car radio, watch the pastor on a TV screen, make an offering, and at the last amen, be the first away. As long as Californians worship the road, drive-through businesses will clean up.
But that means efforts to clean up the air may suffer. The South Coast Air Quality Management District says cars using drive-thrus make a substantial contribution to air pollution.
You're talking about, I think, in about the year 2000 or so, something like about 18 tons per day of carbon monoxide.
Persuading Californians to leave their cars for the sake of the environment may be tough. After all, this is the state that boasted the first ever drive-through tree. Judy Muller, ABC News, Los Angeles.
That's our report on World News Tonight. Peter Jennings will be back tomorrow. I'm Sam Donaldson. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
And now, the news continues with Channel 2 News at 6.